Good evening, class. I did the comic that I chose today was I don't know if you can see it on my Kindle. Is there we go. Star Wars: Age of Republic: The Heroes. Um, I did not actually order this on a paper copy, which is what I normally do. Um, the creative team. There's a lot of creative team members that put this out there. Um, the writer is Jody Hauser. Pencilers are Corey Smith and Wilton Santos. Inkers were Walden Wong with Mark Deering, who specifically only did Padme Amidala's. Um, the writer for Star Wars: Age of Republic, the special, the first one, number one, the weapon was the writer was Jody Hauser and the artist was Paolo Vinelli, and the color artist was Dano, I think it is, Sanchez Almara. 501 plus 1, the writer was Mark Goldman, artist was Casper Wingard, and the color artist was Chris Peter. And the cover art, which was the picture I was trying to somewhat show you, was by Rod Reese. The letterer for for both comics was VC's. The letterer was VC's Travis Langham, and the assistant editor was Tom Groneman, and the editor for it was Mark Peninsula. Editor in chief was CB Cebulski. The chief creative officer was Joe Casada, with the president being Dan Buckley. For the consultation with Lucasfilm, being that it is obviously George Lucas's creation, and it is also operated by Disney. The senior editor contact was Robert Simpson. Executive editor was Jennifer Heddle. Creative director Michael Singling. And Lucasfilm Story Group, James Wing, Leland Chee, and Matt Martin. It had a lengthy um, post to it. The number of pages was 112. It was kind of short for me. I mean, it was. Um, I would actually call this more of a compilation versus the actual story being like one, expanding story. It kind of was set alone comics, which made it interesting. Each one had its own tale to tell. Um, the acts were it was divided into two acts, and I'm wanting to say page 100 was where it really divided up, and it was like, half and half. But I'm not 100% sure, and my Kindle's acting up on me. Um, the story that it takes place, if you're a big Star Wars fan like myself, you will recognize the characters on the front was um, Qui-Gon Jinn. Ooh, let me. Here we go. Is Qui-Gon Jinn, which is right here. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, there we go again. Um, Obi-Wan. Padme, of course, is right here. Sorry, I'm not used to doing things backwards. And of course, Anakin being on the bottom. which means when you look at Anakin, Anakin's also, we're big Star Wars fans, is Darth Vader before he became Darth Vader. Um, the characters, they're on a it starts out, the first comic is um, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn are on a mission with a um, princess, and I can't say her name for the life of me, but I'm gonna call her H. But it's like Haragala. Um, to save her planet in their negotiations with the Senate. And this stormtroopers come in, and obviously we know that if you're not a Star Wars fan, the stormtroopers were associated with the Senate because of Palpatine. Um, the goal then becomes Qui-Gon Jinn actually getting this princess out, saving her planet, and Obi-Wan is basically, he's on a ship trying to navigate, trying to get him out and rescue him also. Of course, by the second one, how Padme's involved is Padme's a senator herself, and she's navigating and trying to help Qui-Gon Jinn. Um, this particular story arc, actually spans, because the first half of it takes place before episode 1, which introduces Anakin, and it really kind of describes the relationship the father son angles to Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn, and it actually gives Qui-Gon Jinn quite a bit of screen time, which I felt the character kind of deserved in the movies, but didn't get. Obviously, he was killed off way too soon. But you see the relationship kind of develop. You see Obi-Wan questioning him, questioning authority, like, parent and teenage relationships go. The second half, it like I said, it introduces Padme. Um, shows Padme and how it really works. How she works in the Senate at the very early stages, and in the first one, she is queen, not senator, so it is a big difference for her. It's two different political arenas to deal with, and she's obviously not a whole lot older in this one. In the first one, she's more like in her 13, 14, even maybe even 15, throwing a bone in age range. It really never set dates how old she was. Um, the second half, she's older. Anakin's a grown up, where before episode 1, he's a little kid, maybe 7, 8 years old. So the characters have definitely changed, and obviously Qui-Gon's dead. Um, whose story is it? I'm gonna say it more is into Qui-Gon Jinn's story. It kind of gives him more of a backstory into why he's the way he is, how he is stronger in the Jedi, what his personal journey actually was to get him to be the strong Jedi he was that we all seen in the movie. Um, does the story have a solid story arc? Both of them hold their own. As far as having both acts do, I meant. Um, the beginning's kind of a little fuzzy. You're not quite sure, where it's really going with it. But by the middle of it, you realize that Qui-Gon is actually protecting this princess on this planet and trying to help her people, and also combat the Senate and follow his duty with the Jedi, which is protect the Senate and the Republic at all costs. Um, The end, I would say the end's very satisfactory because like I do say, they escort the royal family off that planet with some of the other people on that in the royal family, and more commoners um, off the planet. The second half, the second conflict is mainly it's between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and it's Obi-Wan not wanting to really relinquish any power. He he wants to hold on, and he actually is trying to hold himself to a higher standard of Qui-Gon Jinn, and you know be the one he wasn't. But I do believe both of them come to a good conclusion. Obviously, you don't see Anakin failing miserably and going to the dark side quite yet, but we all know somebody has to become Darth Vader, and that's him. So we all know the ending of his transformation, but it's always fun to see in between the movies what drove him, what was his passion, and how it really wasn't all just Padme. It was other things. It made him more human. It fleshed him out. It made the audience feel sorry for him. Um, I would say every one of the characters have a really good arc. Like I said, my favorite was Qui Gon, and I think a lot of it was because I didn't know a whole lot about him going in, and coming out of this comic. I learned a great deal about him, and really had a real strong respect for the character. I'm not I'm not a big one on Padme, unfortunately. Anakin, we all know Anakin's story arc. He was the chosen one. You know, he grew up. The Force was supposedly his father and stuff like that. We all knew Anakin's arc, and we all know where Anakin goes eventually. It was very fun also to see what drove Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan's another character we really don't know a whole lot about him. Um, but like I said, my two least favorite was Anakin and Padme's. Unfortunately, I did like the Queen H is what I'm gonna call her. I did like her story arc because she was all about protecting her people and doing it at whatever cost, including losing her own life. Um, the story does establish pretty good transitions. Like I said, the characters kind of just grew up in the comic book, but you had a good sense of their storylines. You had a good sense of the passing of the hands, story. Um, I seen a lot of McLeod's ideas of transition involved in this particular story, uh, uh, or comic, I should say, it's story. Um, the story, to me, it does somewhat have a mini comic idea. You do sometimes have a tendency to see more of an individual storyline versus a gigantic picture, um, especially with the first half of the comic, with Queen H's story and Qui Gon Jinn's storyline. So you do kind of see that a little bit. You do see that but they do all connect like a puzzle. Um, would I recommend this? I would recommend any Star Wars comic, to be honest with you. Like I said, part of the reason why I am a writer is because when I was little and was watching a galaxy far, far away, it was the perfect escape, and it just drove me to want to create and put characters in that world and play in that universe. So I'm not gonna lie, I would probably recommend any Star Wars comic. But this one kind of, if you're a fan of the prequels, which I'm not really a fan of the prequels, so don't think I am. I like the originals and maybe Force Awakens, but I really am a fan of the originals. Um, I'm gonna go with yeah. Go ahead and read this because you will get educated on some of the relationships and stuff prior to jumping into Phantom Menace. You will learn a lot about Qui Gon, even though in the first one Qui Gon is introduced, but briefly. But um, any other observation you have regarding anything else we have discussed? The lettering in this, by the way, I really on my Kindle for some reason I'm getting a really terrible glare on it. But if you get a chance to look at it, the lettering is awesome, and the artwork in it just blows my mind away. How really good the artwork is. Um, a fun fact about this really is this particular comic was actually written and put out um, not too far after um, Phantom Menace, because there was so much backstory enrichment, and so many people were creating their own fan fiction versions of what was going on. So it gave more of an in depth of after it was not Phantom Menace. I'm sorry, um, Revenge of the Sith. There it is. Was trying to think of the third one, or Return of the Smith. I think it's Revenge of the Sith, but I can't seem to remember it off the top of my head. Um, I mean, I do find it very interesting that that little tidbit was actually more or less created to settle these fan fiction heat waves down. Which I'm not I kind of like fan fiction, so I'm not gonna say fan fiction is not the bomb, but you know. But I'm gonna let you go, and I will thank you. I will thank you and have a good time. It was fun. See you later.